It is Tuesday, May 19th, 2026. What if I told you that this will be the final episode of this channel as a going concern? Or as a daily concern, I should say. The library is going to remain up, and I'm going to keep the episodes in place here because I think I've provided a very valuable library of information in regards to the gig economy and the delivery apps for those who drive. So this is the material is not going anywhere, but I will not be refreshing with new content on a daily basis. I may be popping in occasionally as a response to other people's content, and I will link accordingly. But as far as daily content is concerned, this is the end of the run. And here's why. Because I just checked my daily view counts for the past several days. 0 views. I'm presently performing to an audience of 0. And it's been, I've always felt that if I can even reach a couple people per day with information that is helpful, then that would give me enough motivation to keep going. But for now, and it's also getting a little bit harder given the volume of information that I do have on this channel. It's getting more difficult to come up with new material twice a day. And so in that regard, I'm going to basically end the run here. And again, I will surface on occasion. You'll get notifications if notifications are turned on. If I do have a new episode that comes out to respond to somebody else's material. And of course, as you have known, I do regularly do that. And so that part will continue. But the daily content creation is going to come to an end right here. So on that note, what if I told you why driver pay and offers have always been on the low side? Well, you got to go back in history a little bit to figure out the answer to that one. And the answer to that one is the gig economy and delivery apps and Uber in particular were born. It was born as a cost-cutting measure. It was never born to pay service providers any, high amounts of money. It was always created as a cost-cutting measure. It was always pitched to restaurants or passengers on the passenger side as a cheaper option. And for a long time, within Uber and Lyft in particular, it was. But the companies subsidized a lot of those trips, so they paid drivers more than they get paid now while having less of a revenue because the companies ate the costs. And DoorDash in its infancy was similar. Their focus back then was simply building a customer base and not necessarily they needed to draw drivers in to build that base. So they had to attract drivers with relatively high payouts, which they no longer need. The gig economy was built around a construct of lowering costs, initially lowering costs to restaurants, but then it just became lowering costs for themselves. Because then of course DoorDash and Uber Eats have flipped that script and turned it into they charge. I have actually studied possibly helping build a delivery platform once upon a time and investing into that on my own. And I will say this much. The companies pay Uber and Didi to be listed on the platforms. They also pay a certain percentage out of each gross order, both in terms of service fee and what was called a marketing fee. So they generally pay Uber and Didi 30 to 40% of each order, in addition to a standing monthly fee just to have their menus and stuff listed on the platform to begin with and have access to those orders and to those systems. If you go to pick up at your typical restaurant, they typically will have a tablet there. That's how they accept orders. And that is how they record those orders, and that is how they notify if the orders have been picked up, and that is how they communicate with the platform providers, and vice versa. But payouts have always been low, or were always high, in order to build a base of drivers, but then was sharply yanked downward over the years as it became quite obvious that drivers were willing to put up with almost anything. After that carrot was brought out there to bring them on board to begin with. It's a bait and switch, but it's in long term, so it's very hard to prove in a court of law. So in that regard, it is what it is. It's never, as I've mentioned in yesterday's episode, it's never going to be a long-term solution for anybody. And it's not a permanent solution for anybody at all with the advent of AI, possible robot deliveries, and automated vehicles. At some point, you're probably going to have a DoorDash order where a restaurant is going to prepare the order, slip it into a bag, and then either put it on a drone that is flown to them or a car that is automatically driven to them, slip it in the car, and send it on its way. That's the future. The technology is already being invested in. Uber's probably slightly ahead in this regard, but anyway, that's why the orders are low. Order pay is low, driver pay is low. It's also a function of supply and demand and the very low barrier of entry to become a driver to begin with. So this next part is simple economics. Driver pay is low because there is an excess supply to meet a not as high demand that matches the supply. So what you get is drivers who are desperate to take anything, which is how you get these $4 offers to go 25 miles. I've seen them, by the way. And people who accept them because they're willing to take that over nothing at all. Now, of course, I've never operated this way. My acceptance rate on DoorDash right now is at 6%. Because I refuse to lose. I'm not going to lose a whole bunch of money and then try to make up for it with volume. That's a fool's errand. But we have lots of drivers out there who are willing to take anything. And that's because the delivery companies and the apps have created this situation where an excess amount of drivers is out there chasing a limited number of good orders. And if they can't get a good order, they'll take anything at all. So we have an excess number of drivers as a matter of supply and demand. Thus, they don't have to pay as much to get the orders delivered. And then they can charge the restaurants those steep fees I just talked about. And they make a lot of money. There's another content creator named Anton Daniels. And what he just highlighted, he was talking about the economy overall. But Anton, and I like his material, by the way, he reported that DoorDash just reported record numbers of customers and record revenue, while also calling it the most useless service or least important service in America. He ain't wrong. I virtually never order from them. I save a lot of money, and I mean a lot of money, by going to get it myself. And the apps again cash in on that too because these apps offer the carryout service. So they won't charge you the fee, but they'll charge them the fee. Marketing fee or whatever for carryout purposes. But I won't get charged a delivery fee. The menus are probably marked up a little bit versus in restaurant. At some point, I will probably have a special episode to highlight this. But the barrier, going back to my first point, the barrier of entry is so low. Anybody can become a driver. Practically anybody can get on board these apps. And anybody with a driver's license or car can do it. No questions asked. I mean, as long as you don't have a awful felony or traffic record, you apply, you're in. And that is the way labor economy has always worked. If the barrier of entry is low, so is the pay. If the barrier of entry is high, such as being a doctor or a lawyer, where you have a very limited number of people who meet that qualification in terms of a law or medical degree is concerned, the income on that, the salaries on those are going to be extremely high. That is a part of the economy that has never changed. And that is why that affects drivers, because anybody with a driver's license or a car can do this. It doesn't require any special skills. It just requires the ability to drive a vehicle, and God willing, do so safely. So we can unionize and we can protest and do all the screaming that we want to, but that's not going to change these facts. Making matters worse, you can get 10 drivers in one location and the 10 are not going to agree on what direction the sun comes up in the morning. Because drivers all have different interests in mind. Our interests are almost never aligned with that of the platforms. We're not even aligned with each other. Different goals, different purposes. I, for example, am doing this to get through a rough patch at the moment. But somebody else may be doing this as a full-time income, which I believe, again, is a mistake. Somebody else out there might be doing this just as a side hustle or an extra income. Somebody else may be doing it with a specific monetary goal in mind, or a vacation or something like that in mind. We all have different interests. We all have different goals. We are not going to agree on what the solutions are or should be. It just doesn't happen as a matter of nature. So anyhow, that's it for this, this final go around. As far as daily episodes is concerned, this is the last one. I'm signing off for now. And until we meet again, peace out, homies.